Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Well, sanctions are on Iran. Secondary sanctions are coming down on countries that do business with them. The Russians are standing with their buddies and saying we're going to uphold them. But now we learn that Iran is adding a new weapon to its arsenal. That's cyber espionage. CBN News has learned that investigations have uncovered Iranian hackers that are targeting our nation's power grid.
Yeah, one cybersecurity analyst told us early detection made the difference in stopping this effort to cripple major infrastructure. National security correspondent Erik Rosales has this exclusive report.
Sources say this new Iranian hacking group call themselves Wrassebite. Their target, the power grid system right here in the United States. Cybersecurity experts tell me that they're thankful that they found these hackers at a learning stage and not yet able to create widespread chaos.
The group we're looking at here, Wrassebite, I'm probably guessing we're talking, 18 to 24 months before they're in a position to do something actually damaging. But that's good because it gives us a lot of time. But it's bad because, we may or may not be going as fast as we should to prevent that.
Cybersecurity firm Drago says Wrassebite has been active for maybe a year or two. Researchers first uncovered hacks aimed at government and other targets in the Middle East. Now they're moving to install custom-built malware into U.S. power grids. Recently, experts from Symantec published a detailed report on the activity of the cyber espionage team. According to Symantec, the extent of the group's campaigns could be wider, but researchers uncovered a list written in Farsi of 809 targets whose systems were scanned by the attackers. The targets, not just here in the U.S., but in the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Egypt, and Afghanistan.
Our digital lives themselves are on the line. Our cyber adversaries are working day and night to advance a mortal threat to our networks, our systems, and our national critical functions.
Just last week, top U.S. intelligence chiefs warned of Russia and other countries targeting our U.S. infrastructure and democracy. So how do we flip the equation? Experts say it's not only getting the privately owned businesses working side by side with government, but we must reach out to allied countries as well.
You think Israel, you think South Korea, Japan, countries that have to be part of that solution set, all of whom live in very tough neighborhoods.
Experts say this is in our best interest. Ukraine is the practice field for Russian hackers, and what happens there will eventually come to the United States. Experts say it's going to take a collaborative effort in order to fight these hackers, which will only get worse in the future. Erik Rosales, CBN News, Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking on this program over and over again. I'll say it again. If somebody can get into our power grid and shut down our nation's power, you see, these networks are tied together all across the country in various regions. And so that when they go down, they can affect millions of people. But I'm talking about our food spoiling, our banks and IT, ABM, the machines where we get our money, the stock markets. None of those things will work if the power grid goes down. And we're talking about transportation, we're talking about vehicles, we're talking about millions of people dying. And this is a crisis that is of major proportion, and it's something that needs to be addressed with the maximum resources of the federal government. It's too big for any individual company to take care of. It's got to be a federal move, and it's something we spend money on all these things. I mean, we get a new airplane, and we spend millions and millions of dollars on that new airplane. Well, good for us. But how about the power grid? It needs to be hardened, and every single one of these nodes that connects back and forth throughout this country needs to be fixed. Now, I'm thrilled to report that Regent University, which I happen to be the chancellor, has got a major program on cybersecurity. It's training people. We've had people from Homeland Security, people from the Defense Department, people from FBI, and the people from Navy Intelligence. We've just finished a training session with a group from Naval Cybersecurity and their intelligence branch, and they've booked another 12 sessions on our cyber range, which is so important. But we've got to teach people what to do. Now, on tomorrow's program, CBN News exclusive interview with Energy Secretary Rick Perry to say what they are doing with the energy department to protect the power grid. So this will affect your life. You say, how does it affect me? Well, it'll affect you if your refrigerator doesn't work. If the food you've got spoils, if you can't go to the grocery store and they don't have any food to sell, if the trucks that haul produce back and forth aren't running, if there's no gasoline in the pumps, if you can't get money out of an ATM, all this kind of stuff, it'll affect you very much, and we've got to do something about it. So we sound the alarm. I feel like Paul Revere saying, the British are coming. The danger is real. All right, let's go to Ephraim Graham for more of our top stories. Here's Ephraim.
Pat, Russia is standing up for Iran in the face of U.S. sanctions. The foreign ministry says it will fight to preserve the nuclear deal with Iran and its economic agreements. Russia belongs to the group of nations that signed on to President Obama's plan back in 2015. Meanwhile, Iranian President Rouhani says he is ready to meet with President Trump right now with no preconditions. Twin fires in Northern California continue to consume large parts of the state. The fire known as the Mendocino has become a record-setting fire for the state, burning more than 450 square miles. That's nearly the size of the city of Los Angeles. And the flames have picked up even more Tuesday, destroying at least 75 homes. No deaths or serious injuries, though, have been reported. For months, Israeli firefighters on the Gaza border have battled fires caused by some 1,200 terror attacks. Now American volunteers are fighting the flames alongside them. Our John Wagi has that story.
Palestinian terrorists are using balloons and kites combined with a summer wind to carry their fire from Gaza to Israel.
We found this piece of kite in a scorched field. Behind me in the tree are more pieces of the kite, and behind the tree is the Gaza Strip.
Some people can think it's like a toy, a children's toy, but it's a very deadly weapon, and we are fighting every day to prevent any achievement from this terrorist.
That's when the Emergency Volunteers Project, a U.S. organization dedicated to assisting Israel, stepped in to help.
Our firefighters have assisted putting out literally dozens of fires over the past week here in southern Israel.
Sponsored by the Jewish Federations of North America, spokesperson Eitan Charnoff says when the volunteers arrive, they're ready to go.
Our American volunteers are trained in advance about how to work here, not just in terms of what equipment is different, what tactics are different, what threats are different, but they're also taught the culture.
In February of 2017, I came on a trip to be trained. That way, when we get here in a deployment, they don't have to take time to train me. I get off the airplane and I go to work.
Corey Ray and Aston Bright are both American firefighters.
Firefighting, there's a universal language to it. You pull a hose and you spray the water on the fire. You pull an axe and you cut something. Firefighters, we like to break things, so it's universal.
But some things are different, like fighting fire while under fire.
This is actually an armor-plated, bulletproof fire engine. It's the first time I've ever been on a fire engine quite like this, but that's necessary because we are so close to the Gaza border.
Ray and Bright, both Christians, say their faith played a part in their decision.
I can't build houses, I'm not a doctor, but I can put out fires, and so that's how I serve. As a believer, the Bible says to be a friend of Israel, and the Jews are the chosen people, and so I felt led to serve in some way, and that's all I know how to do.
Shmulik Friedman, an Israeli fire service commander, said working with Americans is about more than fighting fires.
It's much more than 10 firefighters because it's the spirit of the brotherhood between our two nations.
We have to protect the state of Israel and the Jewish people, and the United States is here in this fight with them, and we're glad to be here.
John Wagi, CBN News, near the Gaza-Israeli border.
So good to see Americans lending a hand to Israel. Pat?
You know, that takes me back a few years ago, and I'm talking about the 1940s, when I worked in the Forest Service of the United States during a summer, and we were fighting fires in the Pacific Northwest where we have tremendous stands of trees, and forest fires, if they get out of hand, can be very deadly. And we were having balloons sent over from Japan, incendiary balloons that were falling in those forests and causing fires. So what's happening in Gaza is nothing new. We've fought it before, but we had to deal with those things. And the way we were taught, you had to set up a fire line because fires, interesting enough, go a short distance, you see the ones where trees are jumping across each other and that kind of thing. But what normally happens is the undergrowth is what catches fire, and so we would build a fire line. We'd have so-called Pulaski's tools, and we'd actually trench a ditch around, and the ditches would stop the fires. And now, of course, if you can get a bulldozer up there, you dig a bigger ditch. But where I was working, it was so hilly that you couldn't get any equipment up there but human beings, and that's the way we did it. We dug fire lines, and they worked. So anyhow.
Is there anything you have not done, Pat?
Very few, dear. Very few. I've lived a long time, and I've had many things happen.
A true Renaissance man right here,
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen.
All right.
Learn something new every day.
Well, Ephraim, what's next?
Renaissance man indeed. Pat, Ohio's special congressional election may not be decided for days. Republican Troy Balderson holds a razor-slim lead over Democrat Danny O'Connor. Even if the Democrat loses, both sides are claiming victories of sorts. Now, that's because Republicans have held the district for decades, and President Donald Trump won by double digits. Meanwhile, far left-leaning Democrats fell short in several Midwest primaries Tuesday. As CBN News reported, a left-wing insurgency fueled by socialist candidates has created a rift inside the Democratic Party. This weekend marks the one-year anniversary of the violence between white nationalists and counter-protests that rocked Charlottesville, Virginia. While racial divisions still divide America, some believe the church offers the best hope to bring us together. Amber Strong introduces us to a group of pastors in Atlanta who plan to shout that message from the mountaintop.
Lord, you ordained it before the foundation of the earth.
If you take a look around this room, it may seem like your typical prayer meeting.
Flourishing supernatural gifts of the Spirit.
But there's something different about this group. Pastor Billy Humphrey and preachers like him have thrown denomination aside.
We're saying the same things, and I just look like that's the Spirit of the Lord.
Partnered together for one race, a movement for racial healing.
We believe this, that God wants to change the testimony in the city of Atlanta, where racism and dead religion has kind of informed and influenced the city.
They're off to a good start. 125 pastors across racial lines have already said, "Count me in." Bishop Garland Hunt is one of them. He believes now is the time for the church to lead.
It's not really just political change or policy changes. It has to be a heart change. And the only one who can really fix the heart is Jesus Christ.
Oh, there he is. So they meet every week, praying and fasting. Hunt says changes are already in motion.
We've had meetings where mostly white pastors have come together. So they begin to look around, and they had pretty much white groups. They said, well, how can we make an effort to bring blacks in? And sometimes you have to make more than just what's comfortable. You have to make yourself a little uncomfortable.
Humphrey and Hunt are hoping that discomfort sparks friendships.
Okay, guys, well, here we go. We're heading up to the mountain, folks.
In fact, they want to spur 100,000 cross-cultural relationships over the next few months, all leading up to the ultimate day of prayer. The men of One Race say they plan to make the trek all the way to the top of Atlanta's Stone Mountain. But 100 years ago, a different group of men made a similar trek, and for a very different purpose.
From 1915 to 1960, the Ku Klux Klan would go to Stone Mountain, and on top of the mountain, they would burn crosses and do their rituals. And so what we feel like we want to do is change that testimony.
Humphrey and Hunt agree it's time for a new narrative for Stone Mountain, Georgia, and beyond.
If the church doesn't take its rightful place and step into that place of authority and set the narrative and deal with these issues, someone else will.
There's really a lot of voices out here. The press gives a voice, a lot of the activists have given voices, but the church has to be a preeminent voice right now in the culture.
They say it's time for the church to be heard. One voice, one people, united together. Amber Strong, CBN News in Stone Mountain, Georgia.